My best friend of 6 years betrayed me by secretly dating a guy behind my back, then got even closer to my ex. When I confronted her, she fed me half-truths while spreading lies to our mutual friends to protect herself. The fallout shattered our friendship, forced me to rebuild my life from scratch, and taught me painful lessons about boundaries and trust. Years later, we crossed paths again, not as enemies, but as strangers who once meant everything to each other. The first time I ever saw my best friend in someone else's bed, I laughed. I laughed because I thought it was a prank, because laughing took less courage than screaming. That laugh is the sound that's been chasing me for 3 years. I met Janelle's sophomore year of college, the kind of accidental, cinematic meeting that makes you believe fate writes scripts. She sat 2 rows ahead of me in intro to psych, hair in a messy bun, laptop stickers that shouted, "I love chaos." We both flunked the pop quiz we swore we'd ace, and we bonded over late-night ramen, stolen lecture notes, and a shared knack for sliding into trouble like it was our hobby. She was magnetic in the small, practical ways. She remembered the exact date my grandmother died. She showed up with ibuprofen when my jaw locked from stress. She knew my coffee order better than I did. Our friendship didn't announce itself. It expanded quietly, like a plant finding sunlight. We became each other's emergency contacts, movie partners, and alibi providers. By the time we graduated, it felt like people mistook us for sisters. We shared an apartment, alternating our toothbrushes with reckless roommate trust. When her boyfriend of 2 years, Matt, broke up with her over text, I camped on her couch until she stopped crying and started plotting. When my dad had a heart scare, she took over my shift at work without asking. We were the kind of friends movies make sound easy. That's when everything felt bulletproof. I had a comfortable job at a marketing firm that sucked in the soul but paid rent. Janelle was freelancing, hustling in the creative world, which meant 1 week she was thriving, and the next she was choosing between electricity and avocado toast. We were both trying to stretch our 20s into something that looked like stability. We had rules without calling them that. No overnight guests without warning. No borrowing clothes without asking. No dadding each other's exes, unspoken and sacred. They were small things, but they were stitched into our friendship like a pact. The trouble started like a slow leak. Little things vanished. A necklace here, a book there. At first, I blamed chaos. At least once a month, there would be a missing charger or a hoodie left at the cafe. We laughed it off, deadlines make people forgetful, and I chalked it up to the kind of messiness that comes with shared space. That's when I started keeping receipts. I'm not proud of the shift. It began with practicality, tracking who owed what for utilities, who bought the shared toilet paper. But the receipts became a ledger of attention. I noticed patterns. Janelle's grocery runs grew more extravagant, not with food, but with little gifts she found on sale. Her hours online shifted into the night. My gut tightened like a fist every time I saw her texting and then glancing at me like she'd been caught doing something private. I told myself I was being paranoid, that adulthood was just a messy blur and not a betrayal in slow motion. I told myself that friends change jobs and habits and sleep cycles. But the ledger in my phone kept a quiet account of small expenditures and worse, of moments that felt like they should have been shared. That's when the first real crack appeared. One Friday, Janelle invited someone over for a quick meeting. I was elbow-deep in spreadsheets and frankly delighted for any excuse to leave the apartment. I headed to work later that evening and found my keys on the table when I got home, which wasn't unusual. What was unusual was the soft glow from her bedroom and the scent of something I couldn't place, like citrus and cologne. I told myself she was having a work call. I told myself it was fine. I left my bag on the couch and walked into the kitchen, where I found 2 glasses on the counter and a half-empty bottle of whiskey. My throat closed around a laugh, and I could feel my pulse running to catch up. That's when everything fell apart. We grew up in an era of receipts and screenshots, and now I used both. I started taking note of small anomalies. A receipt from a boutique 3 blocks away, the tag still on a sweater folded on our guest chair, a calendar invite to creative review that showed up at midnight. I did confront Janelle immediately. Confrontations in friendship are like detonating a fuse you can't reattach. I wanted to be sure before I set the room on fire. Instead, I upgraded my watchful eye to proof. I would ask casual questions, "Loved that sweater, where did you get it?" And watch her answer ride a microwave. She'd say, "Oh, outlet shopping." And I would squint at the user's face I saw in receipts, the mirrored name on the credit card slip. I felt ridiculous piecing this together like a bleak domestic detective. The man's name was Aaron. He was a photographer turned brand strategist who freelanced around the city, charming and loud with perfect teeth. I'd met him once at a party and liked him enough to vote him, most likely to be photogenic on Instagram. Seeing his name attached to the small theft of my normal life felt like catching a script that didn't belong to me. I tried to give them space. Maybe I was the problem. Maybe I was jealous. We had been inseparable for 6 years. Maybe she wanted something different, romance, adventure, something I couldn't offer. But wanting something doesn't give you permission to steal someone's toothbrush or hide the truth in a closet. One night, I came home early from a late shift. The hallway light was dim. Janelle's door was cracked. I stood there, the world in a hush, hearing muffled voices. I almost walked away. There's a coward's reflex that says ignorance is cheaper than truth. I didn't have that reflex that night. I pressed my ear to the door like a dumb teenager in a movie and heard laughter, the kind that wraps around a person and squeezes. My breath hitching, I turned the knob. She stood by the window in a sweater I recognized, the one I'd complimented last month, and Aaron was there, fingers tucked behind his head like he owned our couch. They looked like a photograph. Sunlight in the hair, easy smiles, the kind of intimacy that makes you feel like an intruder in your own life. "Hey," I said, too loud, like someone dropping plates. Janelle's face did that split-second calculation, friend, liar, intruder, and landed on panic. Aaron's smile didn't drop. He called me by my name like he already knew me. I could feel blood moving in my ears so loud I could hear the kettle boiling somewhere in the building. There was a beat where the three of us did the small dance of catching a private scene. Janelle said, "We were just," and then stopped, which is perhaps the most honest thing she'd said that year. That's when I asked the question my gut had been growing into. "Are you dating him?" She looked at Aaron like she was asking for permission to answer. He shrugged. "We're seeing each other. Seeing each other. Not dating, not committed. Not even honest." It felt like seeing each other was a phrase neatly folded to fit convenience. It felt like a looped video on silent. We didn't yell. I don't do well with yelling. I did something more nuclear. I asked for details. "Where did you meet? How long? Have you slept in my bed?" The questions were surgical and stupid. Aaron answered with levity, like this was a story he had told before. Janelle answered with an apology that landed like a soft stone that would make ripples later. I left that night with a box of frozen dumplings in my bag, like I was taking something mundane into a serious space. I unlocked the door to my apartment, and it felt smaller, as if someone had pressed a thumb into the foam. Over the next week, I watched their patterns. Aaron's car in the lot at 2 a.m., Janelle's phone buzzing, and then steaming into silence. The sweater I'd once lost turned up in his dry cleaning bag when I dared to ask. They kept secrets like an ill-sorted laundry basket, messy, shameful, and impossible to ignore. That's when I started dreaming of revenge like a sick sport. I won't romanticize it. Revenge is messy and boring. It's a series of small choices that feel righteous until they don't. The ledger on my phone turned into maps. I learned his schedule, his favorite coffee shop, the cafe where he edited photos. I found a photo of him at a rooftop bar where I could see the skyline and the angle at which light loved his face. I began leaving notes, not threats, but poetic observations that made his mornings less comfortable. I regret almost all of it, but at the time, it felt like reclaiming ground. One afternoon, I showed up at the coffee shop where Aaron staged his mornings. He didn't expect me. He greeted me with a smile that had the audacity to be friendly. I sat and watched him set up his laptop. I debated approaching him like a rational adult and instead wrote a note. "You can't build a life out of other people's rooms." "A neighbor." I slid it across the table. He looked at it, then at me, then simply folded it into his notebook like it was a compliment. That baffled me. I'd expected confrontation. I'd expected guilt. I got indifference. Indifference stung more than guilt. That's when everything felt irreparably small. A few weeks later, the universe, or my curated pressure cooker, provided the perfect storm. It was the weekend of our mutual friend Lisa's birthday. We were throwing a casual rooftop thing, string lights, cheap wine, a playlist that had more good vibes than sense. Janelle arrived fashionably late, glowing like someone had handed her the lead role. Aaron came with her, arm linked like they belonged in a commercial. People noticed, eyes darting between them and me like passing judgment on a slow escape. I smiled because that's what adults do, and poured a wine that tasted like budget grape juice. Halfway through the night, Janelle disappeared. I assumed she'd gone to the bathroom. Then someone tapped my shoulder, Lisa, eyes wide. "She's on the roof above," she whispered. Above, we were on a rooftop. Confusion moved like a cold draft up my spine. I climbed the fire escape because that's where cinematic truths reveal themselves, in stairwells and quiet corners with a bad view. At the top of the ladder, I could hear noise. Laughter, the rattle of a speaker, and then a voice I knew too well, mine, muffled, distant. I stepped out and froze. There, on the neighboring rooftop, under a skewed neon open sign, was Janelle, tangled in a conversation with my ex, Mike. Not just talking. They were laughing and tucked into a moment like two people sharing a secret. Mike had been a complicated part of my life. We had been on and off for years, enough that seeing him with Janelle felt like physical sabotage. My heart kicked like a trapped animal. I stepped forward without thinking and called out, "Janelle." They both looked up. Janelle's eyes flashed at me with a mix of guilt and defiance, a look I'd only ever seen in movies when someone is about to make a terrible choice public. "What are you doing?" I asked. Mike answered with a lazy grin, "Enjoying the view." The three of us came down from our respective perches like actors towards the curtain call. Janelle tried to explain. She said it was just a conversation, that Mike had come up to apologize for something old. But the things people say to soften the blow often sound like bandages on a broken bone. "Are you serious?" I asked, and my voice was sharper than I intended. I could see the eyes of other party guests like tiny flashlights scanning for the scandal. Janelle stepped closer, hand on my arm. "It's not what it looks like. Isn't that the line of every bad breakup in the history of cinema?" I wanted to laugh. I wanted to point to the whiskey glasses in my kitchen, to the sweater in Aaron's bag, to the receipts in my phone. There was a small crowd building, drawn by the promise of drama. That's when Mike said, with the stupid, cruel clarity of someone who thinks he's clever, "You two used to be close, huh? Guess some friendships turn into other things." No one laughed. I felt my breath splitting into small, hot pieces. I should have walked away. I should have taken the high road. But anger has a gravity all its own. I told Mike to leave. He smirked and sauntered off. Janelle stood there, hands trembling like someone holding a phone that was about to drop. She said, "I'm sorry," and it hovered between us like a loose paper plane. That's when I did something sacred and stupid. I told her I wanted honesty, not the kind swallowed by shame, but a raw truth. "Tell me everything," I said. She did, not all at once, but in pieces like torn wallpaper. Late nights that started as creative sessions, dinners that turned into kisses, the way Aaron made her feel seen in a way I hadn't lately. She said she'd wanted to tell me but didn't know how. She said she didn't want to ruin what we had. She said she loved me, not in a romantic way, but in a way that tried to justify the small betrayals. Her explanation was a thin tapestry of excuses, stitched with regret. I listened and filmed myself becoming something unfamiliar. Not the kind friend, not the coward, but a person rearranging the furniture of their life. That night, I left the party and walked alone through streets that felt newly foreign. The city hum was a lullaby for strangers. I called my dad and said, "I don't know how to be okay." He told me to sleep. I did, knowing sleep wouldn't fix what my friendship had become. The days after were an alcoholism of small humiliations. Friends asked me what happened. I deflected. I threw myself into work. Janelle texted, "Can we talk?" And I typed answers like legal briefs. "Not yet. I need space." But space is a poor salve when your rooms have been occupied. That's when I found the real betrayal. The things she told mutual friends to justify herself. She said I was distant, that I'd been cold, that our fights had pushed her into someone else's arms. She painted the narrative with shades that made her look like the victim and me like the weathered villain. Words are dangerous like that. They can reshape how everyone else sees you. I watched our mutual friends drift like boats away from the dock I was standing on. Some assumed I was exaggerating. Some told me friendships evolve. One or two looked at me with the pity reserved for someone who'd been blindsided. That's when everything went quiet. There's a point where you stop asking for things back and start asking for them to be unclaimed. I wanted my apartment, my sweater, my stories. But what I wanted most was the simple truth. A a friend who could stay. The day I decided to stop fighting to prove what had happened was the day I reclaimed my life by small acts. I moved the sweaters to a closet labeled mine. I canceled shared subscriptions. I changed my locks because, frankly, boundaries are practical. I unfollowed both Janelle and Aaron on social media, not to play games, but to stop watching a life being curated for me. It's hard to grieve someone when their highlight reel is still playing in your feed. I started to write again. Not angry notes or revenge poems, but small, honest things that felt like me. Grocery lists flavored with tiny jokes, a terrible short story that made me laugh, a note to myself reminding me to water the plant. I threw myself into work and into tiny, normal activities, joining a Wednesday yoga class, buying a cheap houseplant that refused to die, learning to cook pasta without burning it. People started to come back in the unforced way they do when you stop advertising your pain. Lisa texted one night with pizza and a documentary. A coworker invited me to a weekend hike. New friendships crept in, awkward and earnest, like seedlings poking through concrete. The strangest thing was that Janelle reached out months later with a voicemail that started with, "I hope you're okay." She sounded threadbare. I listened and heard the seams. She said she had messed up, that she had wanted to talk but didn't know how. I listened and felt the old tenderness like a phantom limb. I called her once, just to hear her voice, and we spoke in the small, civilized terms of people who have survived something. We never reconciled in the way I once imagined, not a neat fairy tale of forgiveness, but we reached a kind of fragile civility. She apologized more honestly than she had in person, and I accepted in the way you accept the weather. Reluctantly, because choice required energy I didn't always have. I forgave her, not because she deserved it, but because I needed to stop carrying the weight. Forgiveness was less about her and more about releasing my own hands from the rope. There were consequences. Some friends never returned. A few people who had been neighbors turned into strangers again. I lost the morning texts and the inside jokes. But I also found the room to be someone new, not because I was replaced, but because I finally had space to grow. Karma did something small and satisfying. Aaron lost a freelance client when repeated missed deadlines and canceled calls surfaced. A messy, humbling end to a phase of his life. Mike flamed out spectacularly in front of a company I work with. I didn't orchestrate it. I only watched, grateful for the natural order of things. None of that fixed the bruise, but it provided a little warmth on cold days. I learned the hard practical lessons about boundaries. That people will take what you give if you don't set a line. That honesty is sometimes brutal but always kinder than secrecy. And that the rituals of friendship, showing up, telling truth, returning favors of love, are the little stitches that keep things from unraveling. Most importantly, I learned to trust my instincts without letting them become a jail. I learned that keeping receipts is a pragmatic thing, but keeping a life is bigger than documentation. I stopped cataloging every slight and instead wrote down gratitude for the tiny good things that persisted. My dad's terrible jokes, a barista who spelled my name right, the plant that finally bloomed. That's when closure started to feel like a real thing. Not a cinematic reveal, but a series of ordinary mornings where I woke up and felt okay. 3 years later, I can say the wound still twitches sometimes. A song will play and I'll see Janelle laughing, or I'll pass a coffee shop and think of Aaron reading a screenplay. But the twitch is smaller. It's like a scar that surprises you with its resilience. I ran into Janelle at a mutual friend's wedding last month. She looked at me with an expression that was mostly apology and a little nostalgia. We hugged in the way people hug who have survived a storm and are cautiously polite. We did not exchange numbers. We did not plan lunches. We existed in the same space without collapsing into old storylines. That, to me, counts as progress. I started dating again, awkwardly and with more honesty than in my 20s. I told my dates about the past without dramatizing it, as if it were a part of my bookshelf. Informative, not definitive. Honesty attracts the people who can handle you. It repels the ones who can't. That felt like success. I also learned how to speak up earlier. If a line is crossed, I say it. If a joke lands hard, I tell them. If a friendship feels like a draining faucet, I either fix it or turn it off. It's a small set of rules, but it helps. People ask me if I regret staying in the apartment, if I regret the revenge, if I regret the way I handled things. There are things I would do differently. I would have spoken sooner. I would not have let my grief turn into petty sabotage. I would have asked for honesty in a clearer way at the start. But I also recognized that all of those messy choices led me somewhere I needed to be. Awake, more self-aware, and softer in the right places. That's the weird lesson of betrayal. It forces you to choose what you want badly enough to walk toward it. For me, that meant choosing a quieter, steadier life over the adrenaline of drama. It meant learning that the people who stick become family, and those who leave free up space for better things. Sometimes I miss the version of us that was easy and laughing at 2 a.m. But mostly, I'm grateful for the friend who brought me soup when my wisdom teeth were out, for the friends who stayed, and for the small, stubborn joy of being alive and honest. A few friends messaged me after the story blew up in a private thread months back. They said they remembered different things, and I realized memory is a communal fabric stitched with very different threads. We compared stories like eyewitnesses, and the differences were small but telling. When truth is messy, stories become the glue that holds us or the solvent that breaks us free. I still don't know if I did the right thing, but I know I chose myself, and that felt like the bravest kind of honesty I'd ever practiced.